Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of the prophet Amos, and we're in that section which begins with chapter 7, verse 1 of the 5 images that God shows to him. That begins with the plague of locusts, and we talked about that yesterday, the last time we were together. So this time, it's the fire that devours the sheep. In these first 3 images, what we have is God showing judgment and the prophet pleading for mercy, and God grants mercy the first time, the second time, and the third time, God just shows to the prophet that judgment has to take place. And then what follows is an interlude, an interruption, a narrative portion where Amaziah the priest of what? The bull cult, it looks like. Amaziah the priest faces Amos down and says, "Who are you? Go back to Judah." And then we get the last 2 images. So we're on the second of those first 3. And God has already relented when he brought the plague of locusts. Now there's going to be fire devouring sheep. Thus the Lord God showed me, and behold, Yahweh God, the Lord God, was calling to contend with them by fire, and it consumed the great deep and began to consume the farmland. And I said, Lord God, Yahweh God, please stop. How can Jacob stand? For he is small. The Lord changed his mind about this and said, This too shall not be, said the Lord God. Okay, fire. He's calling for fire. He was forming. Same word used in Genesis. The Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground. Forming a locust plague. Now he's calling, he's speaking, and it harkens us back to creation. And the great deep harkens us back to creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens, the earth. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, the great deep. It goes all the way back to creation, reminding us that God is the one who spoke all of this into existence, that God's power is unimaginable. Um, and a fire began to consume, it consumed the water, the great deep, from creation. And after the water was created, after the light was created, Spirit of God moved upon the waters. The next thing that was created was the dry land. Um, and the dry land is being consumed. And in the middle of this, the prophet cries out, God, Yahweh, God, please stop. I didn't mention this please yesterday, but there is the element of petition, of respect, of prayer in this. Although it is in the imperative exclamation point. It's just a crying out, it's a prayer, please. And there's the prophet speaking on behalf of God's people, the way that Samuel did, the way that David did, the way, especially more than anyone else, Moses did. And God relents. The whole thing about God changing his mind, we have to be very careful in what we think about that. God's will is immutable, but God is infinite, and therefore He can work out His will in an infinite number of ways. And so, God doesn't change political parties or decide that He doesn't want to um, have chicken for dinner. He'd rather have the fish. That's not what's going on. This is God having so many options and ways to work out His will, and therefore relenting in one way and choosing another way. Also, this is part of a process, like God speaking to Abraham in in Genesis 18. Was God really dickering with Abraham for how many souls he would use he would save the town for? Or was he using that conversation as a way of demonstrating to Abraham how bad things were? It's the latter. It's clearly the latter. God knows how many righteous souls are there in that town. And it's what's happening here too. Because next time we're together, God is going to take the prophet and show him how bad things are. And the prophet will know God cannot relent because this can't be fixed. Okay, we'll pick up with the plumb line next time, chapter 7, verse 7. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.